Om Vedanta Siddhanta Nirukti Resha Brahmaiva Jivaham Sakalam Jagadcha Akanda Rupa Stiti Reva Moksho Brahmadvitiye Shrutayaha Pramanam Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Is the apt and final conclusion of the Vedanta that all is Brahman. Time, space, living beings, and the world. Living in constant recognition of this fact is what is called enlightenment. Brahman is one without a second, pure and perfect. And the revealed scriptures are the sure and certain proof of this fact. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidveshovahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman, the reality, illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. We have returned with our live streaming audience and all the members of our Hawaiian Sangha here in the SRV associations, and friends who have visited and people who have come from the mainland. We have a nice amalgam of souls that we have met with today in order to study this subject of the devotion of non-separation. And while we were taking our break, I did manage to find that chart on the wisdom eye that goes along with this chart of the 7 Sat chakras. Sat means truth. So this Jnana Chakshu that I mentioned that Sri Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita is the wisdom eye, and it's that 6th center. So there are many questions about it that people have when they're meditating. People naturally sort of concentrate in the head, I think, when they meditate, and the seers are always trying to get you to open up the other centers first, especially the heart. And so people always seem to want to jump to the chase and get into the head of the center of higher vision. But it's very disorienting there. There have been a lot of premature awakenings, that experiences that happen to people that are sort of premature and sort of jumping the gun. So it's better if one concentrates in the heart and opens that up first. The teachers say, concentrate meditation in the heart. And then when the time comes, the natural ascent of the attention of the mind will open up, and a person will arise to these higher centers in a sort of spontaneous fashion. But you have to set the ground first. So with those instructions on meditation, it would be good to have some advance notice of what that wisdom eye consists of. Shankara has a beautiful quote here at the beginning, at the top. I'll read it to you. The world is nothing but Brahman. Of course, Brahman, again, our name for reality in Vedanta. Because Brahman is the only reality. See this always with your spiritual eye, and with an unruffled mind in all circumstances. For what is there to be seen here by the eye other than the mere objects of the senses? In like manner, to that one who knows Brahman, what is there to be seen at all, wherever the intellect may play, except divine reality? So the two eyes that are open, always seeing two or always experiencing two, but that third eye, when it's opened, has this advantage of affording higher awareness to the seeking soul, to the aspiring soul, as is mentioned here by Sri Ramakrishna. He says, the eyes are in the center of the forehead, but their gaze is always fixed on the three lower centers where eating, drinking, and sex life are enjoyed. So if a person hasn't awakened to higher reality, then they haven't really awakened their heart center yet. And so that's why they want you to meditate in the heart center, where devotion and love and as we were talking about in terms of the two wings of the bird, that bhakti yoga is beginning to flourish. And then with that set, then these higher centers can begin to, you can gain access to them. Now, some of the teachings, before we look at the actual references to the Eye of Wisdom in different traditions, and see some of the teachings on either side of this, these sets of threes, that is, the eyes see and utilize the gross senses. That is, this third eye, when it's under control, will affect all the other senses, like smelling, tasting, seeing, feeling, and hearing. By the way, those go along with, smelling goes with earth, and tasting goes with water, and seeing goes with fire, and feeling goes with air, and hearing goes with ether. So the five elements and the five senses have a direct correlation. And if you make those connections in your meditation, then you have a ground, a good ground for spiritual life. If you leave them all disconnected, sort of like leaving the A, U, and M, or your waking, dreaming, and deep sleep disconnected, then it's called ignorance in this tradition. So they want you to always be connecting, which is why the subject of the devotion of non-separation, Ananya Bhakti, is a good one for concentrating on. That we want to be integrating these things all the time, seeing their internal connections. It's only if we've fallen into disparity or we've fallen away from this wisdom that we need to make the connections. Otherwise, the connections are always obvious to the illumined soul, to the yogi. They're living in that kind of connection. That's why they're so often in peace and bliss, and higher wisdom is just common to them, natural to them. But if these are all left disconnected, then you have pretty soon what's called a fragmented life, or a scattered mind. Vikshipta, or kshipta mind, the father of yoga calls it scattered mind. Now this third eye also has control, if it's awakened, over the subtle senses. So here's where you have another connection of fives: odor, flavor, visibility, tangibility, and audibility. You can see that odor goes with smelling, flavor with tasting, visibility with seeing, tangibility with feeling, and audibility with hearing. So now you have 15 connections. It's 3 sets of fives that you've connected, and you're beginning to know not only the meaning of the manifestation, of Divine Mother's manifestation, which she was asking you to meditate upon, to comprehend divine reality and everything that's going on in it. You have that, but you also have this connection leading towards what the Tantricists call Srishti Rahasya, the secret of creation. To them, the secret of creation is all based in vibration, and that vibration has a very, very subtle origin that you haven't gotten to yet when you're still making these connections. But you can see here, it also utilizes causal senses. What they're saying here is you have 3 sets of senses and 3 bodies, that you don't know usually about 2 of them. You only know about your physical body and your physical 5 senses, but you don't know that you have 5 subtle senses and a subtle body, and you have 5 causal senses and a causal body. So they're beginning to reveal all of this inner periphery, this inner environment, these inner atmospheres that we've been calling by terms like lokas or akashas or kingdoms of heaven within you, however you want to say it. They're beginning to reveal what these actually consist of, instead of just leaving it sort of too general so that you can't really meditate on it. Oh, I accept the kingdoms of heaven within me, but I don't really know what they are. I don't know what they consist of. But they consist of very subtle things, and they even get very causal. They get back to an original cause of the thing. So you can see that these five also connect to these five, that then also connect back to these, and these are your three bodies. These are the senses of your three bodies, all under the control of this one third eye. When it's opened, then these get connected, and you are aware of your three bodies. If this eye isn't open, then most likely you haven't made these connections yet, and you're only aware of one body, a waking body, or a physical body. So when we were reading in here, and she was saying about that aperture that opens, and how the soul makes a great exit from that into bliss, and that would be the result of somebody, of a soul who had connected all of these things and was in complete knowledge about their three bodies. The three bodies which Shankara would call the non-self. All three bodies put together are the non-self, but the third eye would represent more that Atman, or that seer, that overseer, or that witness. Sometimes they call it witness, or the great observer. And that's really how I and my Father are one comes into being, the understanding of that. Here it would be that the jiva becomes one with Shiva, or the devotee becomes one with the Divine Mother by opening that third eye. And then oneness is a matter at hand, and it's not something that you have to wait for. It just happens spontaneously. So you can see here that solidity goes with odor, that goes with smelling, and liquidity goes with flavor, goes with tasting, and luminosity goes with visibility, goes with seeing, and homogeneity goes with tangibility, goes with feeling, and all pervasiveness goes with audibility and hearing. So these all have very integral connections that, once meditated upon, you know the AUM of Om, basically. You know what Om means, and you know what the Triputis are that connect things, and you're very much in knowledge of everything that is a part of the cosmology. Now on the other side is a teaching of another set of threes. This third eye sees reality as imperishable. These are the three ways of seeing that Krishna teaches in the Gita. Avinashantam is seeing reality as imperishable. That is, the seer knows that Brahman is birthless and deathless, and also knows that the soul is birthless and deathless. That's why he sings. Namrichor Nashanka Nami Jati Beda Pita Naiva Me Naiva Mata Majanmaha Chirananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham Om. Always ends with Om. And every good mantra begins with Om, and every good stotram ends with Om. So he sings Namrichor Nishanka Name Jati Beda. I have no death simply because I was never born. How can the unborn die? Is what he's saying. So he looks at himself as an eternal verity, not as changing bodies. See, that's why this is the non-self. But you have to outline it in order to know the non-self so that you can get beyond it. And once you know it and you can detail it like that, meditate on it, then you can see everything as divine reality. Until then, you're taking the unreal for the real. You're falling under the auspice of Avarana Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti, the veiling and the distorting power of Maya. And you're not seeing. So to have thine eye be single, as all of these quotes down here will tell us soon, is to live in knowledge of reality as being imperishable. Akanda Satchidananda, supreme reality that's imperishable. And it's also, in order to know that it's imperishable, you have to know all that is perishable, all that is changing. So you come to know the unchanging by knowing the changing. The reason why most people, their spiritual understanding is incomplete is they try and jump to the highest step. Sri Ramakrishna said, you could be a very good high jumper, and maybe you could jump from the lowest step to the highest step of the stairs, but you'd always be in doubt of what those other stairs were like if you never climbed them, what they're made of, what they consist of. So you have to go back and later and take those steps, see, because you have to know the full weight. You can't just know the lower step and the higher step. You have to know everything that went between, or you'll be called back again to have to find that out. So that step-by-step progress that you make spiritually is very important. And that's why both Vedanta and Tantra, in their own ways, practice the devotion of non-separation. They as Ramakrishna put it, I want to know the full weight of the fruit. I'm going to weigh the flesh, yes, but I'm also going to weigh the stem, the seeds, the core, and everything else in it in order to get the full weight of the fruit. So we're not just interested in the flesh and the essence in Vedanta. That's what's most interesting, no doubt, but we're interested in all the other aspects of the cosmology too. Because if we don't know them and identify them, we will be ignorant of them, and to be ignorant is to fear them. If you don't know a thing, you fear it. As soon as you come to know it, fear is gone. So to be in absolute knowledge of all the steps is going to be very important for a complete spiritual life. That's where you get a past master, not just a person who's having their first enlightened experience, but a master, a past master they call it. Now this allows you to see realities imperishable. Sarvatra is next. That is, sees reality dwelling equally everywhere. So it sees reality as imperishable, this third eye, or the soul that has opened the third eye. It also sees reality dwelling equally everywhere. We were talking about that this morning at satsang, that the Atman exists in everyone equally, in quantity and in quality. That is, the fool and the wise man both have the Atman in them in the same degree. There's no difference whatsoever. The only difference is in the realization of in the degree of realization of that Atman. So some have realized it, some haven't. Shravanayapi buhubir yona labhyaha shrinvato pi bahavo yamna vijuhu. Some have heard of the self, some have never heard of it. Others have heard of it, but they fail to comprehend it. So you've got at least 3 different stages there. People who are absolutely oblivious that they have a soul, that's conscious, that is not nature, but is actually spiritual, purely spiritual. Some have heard of it, but they haven't been able to uncover it yet. That is, they haven't risen here, and probably maybe even haven't risen here yet. Or they've just had their first awakenings to the heart chakra, and they're still falling down into lower chakras. And they can't hold a standard yet. They can't hold a default zone. So the seers want you to meditate in the heart, bring it up there, bring the energy up there, meditate there, create a platform that you can always call your default zone, that you'll never fall below that. So if you can do that, then pretty soon you will have that kind of equal vision. You see, sama vatistam. think it says there. Yeah, samavatistam, equal-sidedness, equal vision, equal vision. Krishna, same-sidedness. Krishna talks about it in the Gita quite a bit, and it's also mentioned by the Buddha in his teachings in the Dhammapada. Equal-sidedness, equal vision. Everywhere. Sarvatra means everywhere. So you have that same-sidedness about God existing in everywhere, just like she was telling you about, you must see me everywhere, right? You must see me in the youth, in the aged, in the poor, in the public people. You must feed them, feed the hungry, and feed the devotees. All your acts must be done, or you must attempt to do all of your acts in that same-sided vision. And that would be a very, very high level of consciousness to attain if you can do that and not fall out. Example we used this morning is that light shines on a rock very poorly, light shines on a leaf better, light shines on a lake better still, but light shines on a mirror best of all. So those are 4 levels of being. The light is the Atman in all of them, but some of them, the rock isn't able to reflect that light very much. So the rock would be your plant, your insect, can't reflect very much light, and the leaf would be the animal, and the lake would be the human being, and the mirror would be the seer, or the sage, the realized soul. So same light reflecting in all of them, but some can't manifest it or haven't realized it, therefore can't shine it to the same degree that others can. Nevertheless, it's there in everything, and needs to be brought out and manifested. Now the 3rd level of this teaching is called Prakriti Karma Kriyamanani. That is, this 3rd eye sees that nature performs all action while the soul remains actionless. The way Krishna puts that in the Gita is, I do not create the fruits of action or the modes of action for human beings. Nature does all that. I remain aloof, detached. So nature is the abiding place of all action. The Lord is the abiding place of all inaction. So one's going to have to experience that themselves, and the best place to experience that is right here. Because you're still active here in the heart chakra. You're singing, you're dancing, you're doing your pujas, you're practicing devotions, and you're communing with God in form, with form. You're having a play, a sport with God with form. But as consciousness ascends these higher centers, form starts going away, and if you stay with it and keep your attention, it's like sort of like, can you keep your attention when you go into deep sleep tonight? No. You give up. You give up to it. You go formless in deep sleep, but you don't take your consciousness in there with you, which is why you practice meditation, so that you can stay conscious when these great shifts of your own consciousness happen to you. When these shifts happen to you inside, and you're not there to participate in it, then you fall off of your meditation. You fall out of yoga. And so to remain in yoga is to be a participatory witness who is ever present there, on vigil, when these shifts of your consciousness come, because these shifts of your consciousness come very rarely. You can meditate. The Holy Mother said it nicely, Sri Sharda Devi, my teacher's teacher. I am Parapara Guru, Bhyo Namaha. She said that you can meditate 365 times a year. Hopefully you're going to do more like 730, because you want to meditate twice a day, hopefully. But you can meditate once a day for a year, and you should make sure that you're there for every one of them. You never miss a day. She liked constancy best of all, perseverance. But she said, maybe out of those 365 meditations, you might have 25 or 30 that are really good meditations. That there's one of these shifts of consciousness taking place in you. That's how you have to be on vigil, watching your own consciousness all the time, for signs of that shifting. Shifting means moving up the chakras. If you haven't learned a system like the 7 chakras yet, then it gives you a very powerful key. It's called Kundalini Yoga, and it gives you a very powerful key as to what's going on in your consciousness, rather than just sort of leaving it as some esoteric knowledge that, a hands-off type of affair. It's actually giving you very direct, very deep instructions, just like she's doing here, about how to be there and participating when these shifts of your consciousness take place. You're going to have to become as interested in that as you are in watching your chemistry experiment, you see, or watching your children grow. See, you'll have to become at least as interested in watching the changes of your consciousness happen as you are in watching your children grow in order to make spiritual life successful. So you have to be there, and of course the advantage of it is, if you are there for it and you do have spiritual awakening, you can teach your children that. That's why we have this wisdom, because the rishis taught their children these truths. And it's not something that's not happening, see, in present times. Did your parents teach you this, is basically the question. Or did they teach you just practical things about the world? Or maybe they taught you some things that weren't so good. They weren't such a good example. So it's very rare to have dharmic parents in this day and age. Most of the dharmic parents are in India or in Tibet or places like that, where these teachings have been being given to them for 1400 years, in Tibet, for instance, and much, much, much longer in India. So to have that kind of access to teachings early on is a rare thing in this day and age, in this Kali Yuga, they call it, age of darkness. So back to the main point, if you are there for these shifts of your consciousness and watching it, then it is the ascension of consciousness in your chakras, and you can take note of what it's doing and what it's revealing to you. Bring your full consciousness to bear. So it's not just bring your full consciousness to bear on actions, but it's bring your full consciousness to bear on the mantra, its meaning, the chakras, and so forth and so on, if you want to become a student of or an adept at spiritual life. It's going to require that of you, that kind of commitment. So it is unique among all arts and sciences and so forth. Everything else is called aparavidya in India. It means mathematics, science, astrology, music, crafts. It's called aparavidya, lower knowledge. There's only one thing that they class in Paravidya, supreme knowledge, and that's this wisdom. So it's going to behoove you to drink deep of that stream of wisdom and put it into practice. Put it into practice. So it says here, see that nature performs all action and the soul remains actionless. So that's a very high degree of realization. You can hear it right now from me, and I hope that you can understand it intellectually. But basically it just means that Brahman does not move, Brahman does not think, Brahman does not transform. Everything else does. And that's the one barometer by which you can gauge the changing and the unchanging, or the real and the unreal. If it changes, put it in the category of Maya. If it doesn't change, it's Brahman. So you're going to have to watch it a long time to see if it changes or not. Your consciousness, by the way, is changing, isn't it? Apparently so. It's changing as it moves up these chakras. That is, your mind's consciousness is changing. You're seeming to be going through transformations. You're seeming to get visions. But that's all still in the realm of Maya. We called it Mahamaya this morning, as it gets higher. But when you reach that one plateau where everything levels off, and that's really the, as she called it, the aperture or doorway into higher reality, into divine reality, when that opens, then you will be standing at the porthole of actionlessness, transformationlessness, birthless, deathless, causeless reality. And, you know, most likely you'll just dive in. A hailstone is falling to the ocean. It has nowhere to go but to dissolve, as Shankara put it, see, in one of his beautiful scriptures. He says, that great ocean of Brahman, replete with the nectar-light swell of the Atman, into which my mind fell like a hailstone into an ocean, and rendered me completely blissful, formless and blissful. So he had the experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi when he was in his teens. This was a man who only lived 32 years. He was teaching greybeards when he was in his teens. So Shankara was one of the great Amsa avatars of India. Much like Vivekananda, only lived to 39 years old. And so they pack a lot into a very short time, and they don't hang out in the body for very long. They come, give their message, and they're gone. Right out of that aperture, most likely, or here, you see. So a good teaching on the three bodies with the 15 senses, 5 each, and a good teaching of how, when realization is gained and this eye opens, what you actually see or what happens to you, what realizations you get. The 3 ways of seeing, spiritually speaking. There are many ways of seeing non-spiritually speaking. There are many ways of seeing philosophically speaking and cosmologically speaking and intellectually speaking and mentally speaking. And in nature, there are many low-grade mantras. How's the weather? How are you? How did that make you feel? There are many low-grade mantras, but here you have really 3 prime ways of seeing, very well defined when the third eye is open. Now, here's some of the references I found about the third eye in different religious traditions. Christianity says, Jesus, that is, if thine eye be single, thou shalt know the truth. Many of us have heard that saying. In Hinduism, Sri Krishna says, they who perceive with the eye of wisdom, they truly see. Devoting themselves to wisdom, they are neither born at the time of creation, nor are they disturbed at the time of dissolution. But the deluded do not see me as I depart, stay, and enjoy. Only they truly see who possess the inner eye of wisdom, the Jnana Chakshu. I think one of the more informative parts of that sloka is that he says that when you reach that level of realization, that you're neither born at the time of creation, nor are you disturbed at the time of dissolution. So back to the stotram I just sang, Na mrityur na shanka, I have no death because I never had a birth. These are those beings who are living at the level of ajativada, the path of those who know that they're birthless and deathless. And they know this even when they're in the body. So they're not really being born at all. They're just taking a body on from a different standpoint. To them, the body is an overlay 3 times. And they've already come through that to take on the physical body. They had to come through the causal body, into the subtle body, and into the gross body. And just like you're coming out of Turiya into deep sleep, and out of deep sleep into dreaming, and dreaming into waking, it seems to you like you're coming into these different levels of consciousness, and you're forgetting so much as you go through them. But they're not forgetting at all. They're coming from the highest state and taking on the body as a assumption. They're assuming a form. And they're only going to associate with it. They're never going to identify with it. But so many beings born, I am the body, I am the senses, this world is real, I must get the objects for enjoyment, I must amass wealth, I must get power over others, so forth and so on. The occult powers are dancing in their minds the minute they hit the body. And they've forgotten everything about their deeper consciousness. Everything. So this art of spirituality is about awareness, timeless, deathless awareness, and it's all pervasive, it's eternal, it's constant, it's ever on vigil, and it's transcendent of all of these other levels of Maya, or of relativity. Reality, relativity. It's set in stone that way. So if you're neither born at the time of creation, nor you're disturbed at the time of dissolution, but you're still walking around in a body, then you're probably one of those great seers who knows that birth and death are illusory. That's why my teacher used to tell me, put death in its own grave and leave it there. Now, the Kundalini system, which we really looked at quite a bit today in this devotion of non-separation, says this about the third eye. As Kundalini traverses the sixth center, or lotus, called the Agya Chakra, it's there, currents of refined prana rise high. Visions, light, and internal sounds are experienced, and the mind gets so absorbed that it loses normal consciousness. So really the world goes away. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that. The more you go towards God, the more the world goes away. Now, people want to hold on to the world. They want to have God and Mammon at the same time. But Christ said you cannot worship God and Mammon at the same time. You have to choose one. So it's just one of the pure and plain facts of spiritual realization that the worlds of name and form fall out and cease to persist as your consciousness begins to graduate to these higher centers, or to higher levels of consciousness. Like the salt doll walking into the ocean, it lost its form and it wasn't going to congeal again. It liked being formless. It liked bliss. Unalloyed, uninterrupted bliss. Ananda. As I was saying, you look in the phone book and you'll find a lot of Jones and Smiths. But the last word Ananda, the last name Ananda, that's multitudes of Swamis have that name. They have taken Ananda as their last name, and so that's something that realized souls are realizing, that the nature of divine reality is unalloyed, uninterrupted bliss. They prefer that than this on again, off again, pleasure, pain cycle. Shakyamuni Buddha, that is the Buddha of this age, 550 years prior to Christ, said, I have the true Dharma hidden in my wisdom eye. That's Christianity, Hinduism, Kundalini Yoga system, and Buddhism. Let's look at Taoism. The eyes are the windows of the soul. Between the two windows is the main door to divinity. Enter there to discover your inner divine nature. Lao Tzu said that. The eyes are the true windows of the soul. But between those two windows is the main door to divinity. You want to enter there. The Gnostics said, the true gate is also the door of one's divine nature. It is the front door to heaven. It is located neither left nor right, up nor down. It is right in the center, and thus is called the door to divinity, the white sun. There's another beautiful name given to the third eye, the white sun. I think also in the Christian mystics were calling it the white dove ascending. The white dove ascending. So it's just the idea of pure white light coming up and taking over and dissolving all problems and all names and forms. Finally, Confucianism. 3 persons were walking together. Who is the master? They all have 2 eyes, but the divine third eye is the master of them all. So there, Confucius even makes a reference to that in early Chinese before pre-Buddhistic probably. We're talking about somebody having that esoteric wisdom of the third eye in that country too. So in these religions I found, and there are probably more that could be researched and culled out and added to the list, but there's examples of the presence of the third eye in 7 different traditions and religions of the world, making it a very important topic for meditation and study for us. Very revealing. Now in the remaining time, which is short, I wanted to show us this chart on Shakti Advaitavada. We call the devotion of non-separation. We have this idea of Shaktism, which is Divine Mother worship. That's the word Shakti, those who worship Divine Mother, and Advaita, non-duality. So it's the perfect example of this Ananya Bhakti in the Shakta tradition. Early on we looked at it in the Vaishnava tradition, and as we went through the other chart we saw many references to it in the Shaivite tradition. I hope you understand that these are all, the kind of tantric side of India. The Vaishnavas are the Krishna worshippers and those who worship Ram, and the Shaivites worship Shiva, and then Shaktism is specifically Divine Mother oriented. So we can see this beautiful combination and marriage of the various yogas in all of these lineages or these traditions. Now, if we want to, in the last minutes, concentrate a little bit on Divine Mother, since we were already looking at her so deeply and some of her instructions in the Devi Gita, we can look at this chart, Divine Mother Non-Duality, or Shakta Advaitavada. The Tantras say, non-duality is the essence of Mother Wisdom, which through her word as scripture emanates to reveal the mystery of the universe. God with form, living beings, worlds and objects, all evolve from her. So, as I chanted at the very beginning of the class, Vedanta Siddhanta Niruktiresha Brahmaiva Jivaham Sakalam Jagadja. Brahmaiva Jivaham, Jiva, the living being, Sakalam, time, Jagad, world, Cha, and. So, living beings, time, space, and the world, all of that is Brahman. If you have that third eye open, then as Shankara said in his quote, you will see all as Brahman. Otherwise, if you don't, all you're seeing is objects. You're seeing objects of the senses with 2 eyes, and that's as far as it goes. So you have a physical body, 5 senses, zip, that's it. And you go to death at the end, and you lose those. But if the third eye is open, you're seeing the 3 worlds. The immanent world, the transcendent world, or the immanent world, the transcendent world, and the absolute world. You're seeing 3 worlds inside of you, with 3 different bodies, with 5 different sets of contemplation senses. These are the kingdoms of heaven within that Christ talked about. He saw them too. He used them. He moved about in them. He came through them when he manifested a body and gave up the body and went out of the aperture and gave them all up. Krishna says, the soul does that like a child outgrows clothes as it grows bigger. The soul sloughs off bodies and takes them on just like a child puts on new sets of clothes and takes them off when it outgrows them. So this idea of reincarnation is something rather new to many souls in the West, but the idea of conscious rebirth is even further removed from their scope of thinking. That there are souls that actually know themselves prenatally, before the idea of getting into a fetus in a body. They're outside of that. Outside really means inside, of course, inside of realization. And they're looking out on the worlds of name and form and plotting their own course. They're doing this very masterfully. On the other side, many millions of souls are doing it totally at the beck and call of chance, of karma, and making very bad choices and then suffering to a great degree. So there's not just an esoteric appeal to these teachings, there's a very practical side to them that deals with suffering, because you can be an atheist or an agnostic, or you can believe in nihilism, or you can believe in the void after death, whatever. It's really up to you, but suffering is everyone's business. Everyone's. Nobody can escape. From avatar to ant, nobody can escape suffering as long as you take on a body. So, why Krishna wants you to do it all as a sacrifice, you see. If you take on a body, do it as a sacrifice. He's doing it as a sacrifice. When he comes as Krishna, Ram, Buddha, Christ, Chaitanya, Shankara, Ramakrishna, when those kinds of beings come, they do it as a sacrifice for you. There's no reason they need to come back to earth for anything. Krishna says that very clearly in Gita. Everything I've had to obtain, I've obtained long ago. I have no need to be here on the world in this body, but I come back here to help you. It's because if I gave up on the worlds, they'd all perish. And if I didn't act as an example to people, they would fall and destroy themselves. So that's adiyagya, that's the supreme sacrifice in the form. There's only one of those, adiyagya, that's the avatar. And there's only one avatar too. Comes many times in different forms, but there's only one of them. They're the same. Christ, Buddha, Krishna, Chaitanya. They're the same being. They're cut from the cloth of non-duality. They are non-different from one another, and they know themselves. In other words, the soul is in everything and everywhere, right? Well, many people don't know that, but they know that. So they will recognize themselves and that same Atman in others as being non-different. It's the non-touch yoga. It's the yoga of non-difference. So worlds, objects, beings all evolve from that Divine Mother principle. Mahamatrika called it here. It all comes from her word. That's why she says the mystery of the universe. Those tantras are very powerful scriptures in that regard. Now, what is the intent of Divine Mother in her path? She wants you, her primary directive is to manifest your soul's inherent perfection. This gets more to the skinny of the matter. Basically, why did you make me come here? Why did I take on this body? If consciousness is the formless and everything, then what the hell am I doing here? Suffering and enjoying in turns. See, why did I come here? It's the old why question. So Shaktadvaita Vada moves to answer that by saying you came here to manifest the soul's inherent perfection. If you can do it here on earth, you can do it anywhere. You may have noticed, quite easy to do it in your dreams or in deep sleep or in heaven or in some of the higher lokas. Everyone knows himself to be light there. It's obvious because light's everywhere. But the darkness of ignorance is here, and it's very thick. It's a curtain of nescience. It's a cloud of unknowing. And it makes you doubt. Doubt is your playmate at recess. It makes you fear. And it makes you ignorant. Doubt, fear, and ignorance, according to Lord Shiva, are the three ingredients of the curtain of nescience. It's that simple. Cloud of nescience is not such a mystery anymore. It's just the human mind's penchant and tendency to doubt itself as reality, and to fear formlessness, and to be ignorant of its divine nature. I mean, that's about as nutshell a form as you can put it in. And if that curtain of nescience thickens when you brood on that, brood on fear, brood on doubt, brood on ignorance. You make it thicker, and so you'll never get out of it. You'll never see through it. This aperture will never open to release you. That soul in flight will never get free. It'll just be a bird body or a vulture. So it will never be a great, noble soul freeing itself. But if doubt, fear, and ignorance are not brooded upon, that is, if you water the flowers and not the weeds, if you resist not evil, then that curtain of nations begins to thin, and you're walking around seeing Brahman everywhere. You can almost taste him. That is, smelling, tasting, hearing, touching, and feeling become divine. Sri Ramakrishna said, "Oh, people talk about the sexual experience." See, but he said, when you get enlightenment, every pore becomes like a sexual organ. That's the difference between a little bit of physical enjoyment and some spiritual bliss. He says, my whole body became infused with bliss. See, the hair stood on the end of my arms. My skin horripulated. Chikan skin brada. As we say here locally, chikan skin brada. And my eyes rolled up in my head. I couldn't even stop it. And my tongue clove to the roof of my mouth, and I was gone, utterly gone. Where did I go? Where did the I go? So to manifest the soul's inherent perfection here on earth is Divine Mother's intention for you here. It's a very rare thing. The more you can do it, the better for you and the better for everyone. That's the primary intention of this path. So it's not anything vague, is it? It's something very adamant that she's pronouncing to do. It's almost a command from her. There's a beautiful song in India that says, I have received a command from my Divine Mother that death must die. She came to me and said, why are you fearing death? His name is Yama. I know him real well. He just performs a small little function in my territory, of all my divine territories. Yama just performs a little function of taking the energy from one body to the next. But that energy, called Shakti, is unborn. It's undying. It's eternal. Read my lips. See? It's eternal. That the very fact that there is a word called eternal means that eternal exists. The very fact that there's a word called void means that somebody saw it and came back to tell us about it. So you should avoid the void and annihilate nihilism and wake up to your true divine nature, which is pure being. Therefore, doubt and fear go away, and ignorance is on the wane, you see. If you want to use death in a positive way, then sick it on ignorance. See? Tell it to go after fear. Can you destroy my fear? Can you destroy my doubt? That's using death in the right way. That is, place it on things that can die. Don't place it on yourself, because you can't. You're just creating a remedy without a solution, a disease without a cure when you do that. So this is Shakti Advaitavada. This is where the devotion of non-separation concludes in this series of 4 classes. That we want to bring it around to Divine Mother reality. And that's the path that has been granted to us via Sri Ramakrishna and his advent, bringing Mother Kali out of hiding. Another beautiful song, Paramaguru Sri Ramakrishna, Loho Pranam Namaskar. You have awakened Mother Kali from the cremation grounds of ancient India. And with her name, you're liberating souls now. Initiating people into the path of Mother Kali. Divine Mother reality, it's upon us. Not just some nice New Age goddess stuff with crystals and peacock feathers. This is the reality coming to you in the form of a profound philosophy that has its own name and that is as ancient or more ancient than the Tantras. She's the primordial goddess. The secondary directive of her path is to free the soul from cycles of rebirth in ignorance. Karma bandha. Karma bandha. It almost sounds the way it is, isn't it? The bondage of karma. Karma bandha. It almost sounds in Sanskrit the way it means in English. So, if you come here, make sure that you spend your time manifesting your inherent perfection. Don't spend your time getting bound up in cycles of karma that will cause you to come back in rebirth. That's called putting out fires. That's what you're doing nowadays, you see. Oh, I came here to realize my divine nature. I had all these higher motives for myself. You're a young person. Now, 40 years from now, you're saying, where did I go wrong? You see. You look at your parents or you look at other people and say, was their potential, their divine potential realized in this life? Or did they just tread water? Or did they sink? Or sink sometimes and then come up again and sink again? See, barely kept their nose above water. What kind of a way is that to live? This is your opportunity right now. You think you'll get another one? I mean, in that sense, reincarnation might as well be a lie, and you really do only have one lifetime. In that way, I can accept the Christians' way of explaining things. You might as well just have one lifetime. This is it. It's upon you now. So forget other lifetimes until you can manifest your divinity in this one. Everything else will become a matter of memory and Akashic record once you manifest your divinity here and now. It's your opportunity. So, primary and secondary directives, what's the result of this path? Awakening of Kundalini to reveal the Atman via pure mind. So Sri Ramakrishna said in the Gospel of Ramakrishna, there will be no awakening until the Kundalini rises up the spine. There will be no awakening until Kundalini rises. Or, if you want to put it directly in terms of the Tantras, Shakti Jnanam Vina Devi Nirvana Naiva Jayati. There can be no liberation without knowledge of the Wisdom Mother. She needs to be known. It's her that's awakening in you, and it's her that you want to propitiate, so she will awaken in you. And once she awakens in you, talk of fear, doubt, and ignorance is not even important anymore. You'll be so attracted to her, that Kundalini power. You'll be so compelled by her, so driven by that dynamism of Shakti, that you won't even consider karma anymore. You can burn it up like a heap of cotton, putting a match to it, they say, right? You ever tried that? Have a heap of cotton and put a match to it? Poof! See? So blast your karmas. Who said that? Swami Vivekananda. Blast your karmas. Blast your past lifetimes. Awaken right now to her reality. And all of that will be not even a consideration in your mind anymore. He said, Ramakrishna, it'll be like burnt rope. Burnt rope looks like a rope, but it can't bind anyone anymore. It's just a pile of ashes. You blow on it and it disintegrates, you see. So render your karmas and your imperfections and your obstacles and your transgressions and all of that happy stuff, render it nil. See, and if you believe in nihilism, why not, put everything that is unreal in the void. This is positive thinking. The rest of the chart is more complex, but and we can take parts of it. In the auspice of this title, Devotion of Non-Separation, if you look here, Advaita Vedanta is the non-separation part, the Advaita, and Tantra is the devotion part. And all is Brahman, they say in Advaita Vedanta, and they call it Shiva and Shakti in Tantra. In Tantra, they like the idea of the divine relationship, that when man and woman get together, it's not just a male and female principle that's happening, but it's Shiva, the supreme masculine energy, and Shakti, the divine feminine energy, are coming together. And so they look at it in terms of the divine couple. On one side, Advaita Vedanta wants you to use viveka, discriminating wisdom. Of course, Swami took his name after that. He thought it was so important for us. And Tantra wants you to use the tattva vichara, that is, learn all those principles, like those 24 cosmic principles and so forth, about your 5 senses and your 5 subtle senses and your 5 causal body senses and your outer and inner and transcendent body. Know the ground. Know the ground inside out, because that's where you're going when you go into dream and deep sleep. That's where you're going at the time of death. You should know that ground before you go there. Because then you say, I know it like the back of my hand. See, I was running through the dark with my friends when I was a teenager, and we were in the backyard of one of my friend's house, and he said, follow me, I know this place like the back of my hand. And he turned around and started running, and all of a sudden he was just like in midair for about 2 seconds, and then fell back. He'd hit this wire fence that was invisible in the dark. Just fell back. Follow me, I know this place like the back of my hand, his famous last words. We all laughed about that and kidded him about that for the rest of our high school years. So if you don't know the place like the back of your hand, you'll run into hidden obstacles. That's how it came to considering in my mind. You see, I had to consider that as a teaching. So know the ground that you're working with. And that's going to have to do with method, and this is going to have to do with basis. The basis of Vedanta is all is Brahman. It's just puts it all to rest. And basis of Tantra is this Shiva and Shakti, playing, sporting, lila. Here is lila, divine sport, and here is, they're not really even concerned with lila. They're just concerned with all is Brahman, one level of consciousness called samadhi. Down here, purification-wise, tattva-gyan and upasana, meditation and realization of principles. Over here, purification of senses and mind and purification of thoughts. So you put these two together and you've got the different kinds of shuddhi, it's called. That is, dravya shuddhi, purification of the elements, and kriya shuddhi, purification of your acts, and chit shuddhi, purification of your thoughts. That's basically how to render it. The 3 kinds of purity. So when we're reading in here about the different pujas you do, right? All the puja and worship of all the mandala and so forth, you have to start out with Buddha shuddhi and purify the elements. You have to make sure the water you're using is pure and the fire is pure and the articles are polished and everything. That's all has to do with outer purity. You can't offer God anything that's impure, so you have to be absolutely specific in the puja about those levels of purity. If you polished something and it looked absolutely pure and clean, but it has the defect of your thought in it, you polished that article with bad thoughts in your mind, so you have to go and polish it all over again with good thoughts in your mind. Even if the thing is absolutely clean, physically speaking, you've dirtied it mentally. See, so very specific you have to be about each little thing that you do in puja, and then your acts will follow. You see, you'll get pure action by learning a lesson of how to purify the elements and purify your senses. You'll begin to desire pure activity. You'll give up going to dirty places, touching unclean things and so forth, and you'll just crave after purity of act. And then the greatest of all, purity of mind will follow. Purity of mind, that is Brahman. There's really no difference. All you have to do is just spend time in it. Buddha mind is Buddha nature. Pure mind is God. Those are two quotes by Lord Buddha and Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Buddha mind is Buddha nature. Pure mind is God. They said it 2,500 years apart, but same exact meaning and the same import is given to it. Well, there's this word aham. See, we can end with this. This word aham means I. Of course, there's the ego I, ahamkara. That is the cause, kara, of everything, right? The ego is that unfortunate moment in time where you separated yourself out from the whole, where you became a separate little puddle of water apart from the lake. You decided to become a separate self, ahamkara. But this aham, is as important in Tantra and in the Shaktapatha as Om is in the Vedas. Why is that? Paraprakasha is one thing. The A means the supreme space of pure being. Ha means svatantriya, inherent freedom. It's one of the main tantric words. Svatantriya means this unbounded freedom that you're always seeking after. And M is the bindu. That's third eye, right? Bindu is third eye. It's the point of first emanation, where everything came from. So if you took the 7 chakra system and you came down with it, instead of going up with it, you came down with it, then you would come in through the crown of the head and you'd become aware of the first traces of form when you reached here. A very, very slim vestige of form here. It's very disorienting to come here, to bring your consciousness here. That's one of the dangers of the third eye, is that you don't know where you are because everything is so vast and formless. So it's easy to get lost there until you master, like getting acclimatized to a high elevation. So then you can breathe better. The same with consciousness at this third high level. So when an avatar, which means that which descends, avatar, when it descends through the chakras, it comes down and enters into this third eye out of absolute formlessness, and it begins to take on a semblance of form. That's going to happen through thought or conception. It's going to first be conception that happens at a very, very high level, and then it's going to descend down into these lower chakras, and it begins to take on meaning and word. So here at the throat chakra. Then it begins to take on the presence of the multitude of souls who are devotees of the Lord, playing with God. I'm stopping because about 3 different songs just entered my head. But in wisdom's firmament, the moon of love is rising full, and love's flood tide is flowing everywhere. O Lord, how beautiful thou art, victory unto thee. On every side shine devotees like stars around the moon. Their friend, the Lord all-merciful, is busy playing with them. Behold how the gates of paradise are open wide. You think you would write words or lyrics like that without having some realization behind it? What to speak of knowing the truth of it? You can't just make up things like that. The soft, sweet spring wind of the new day raises fresh waves of joy. In it, it carries to the earth the fragrance of God's love until all of the devotees are drunk with ecstasy. He's describing this descent of consciousness into the realm of the heart, basically. That's what made me think of it. So you come to the heart, you're entering into what Sri Ramakrishna called the drawing room of God. See, I mean, you go to a rich man's mansion, and he's got all these places to go to, right? But you usually find him in his drawing room with a pipe, see, kicking up his heels with slippers on. So God is like that when he comes down into a divine form. He wants to sport with the devotees, so he's going to come here. And there he will see all his devotees, the 16 apostles of Christ, the 8 of Buddha, or the 12 apostles of Christ, the 8 noble 8 of Lord Buddha, the 16 apostles of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the 20 so direct disciples of Shankara. He'll meet them here in the heart chakra. You have to come down that far. But Ramakrishna said, I couldn't go any further down. They have to come up to meet me, is what he means. I mean, the avatar works with all these beings who are suffering horribly and helps them, but he works with them as an attracting force. He draws them up. He doesn't go down with them. He draws them up. What's the saying? I heard it just the other night. Don't swim too close to a drowning man. Take you down with him, you see. You better be a really strong swimmer or have some powers of convincing, see, before you take on that job. So to draw souls up is the purpose, to inspire them, to make them aspire, so that the Kundalini, they can get on the wings of the dragon bird and ride her up to these higher. Up means in, of course. So what got me off on that trajectory, which is connected, is the bindu, that first point of origin, that third eye where consciousness enters and where it will make its descent down into these other chakras. Here, our own founder, Lex Hixon, peace be upon him, said, she is called Parameshvara, Paravak in the Agamas, Shabda Brahman in the Vedas. There is nothing beyond her, but there are infinite numbers of worlds within her. She is the inner essence of Shiva, not an extant consort. So, Lex's idea, and he was very much, in fact, this chart is really pretty much in honor of my memory of him, because Shakta Advaitavada was a Sanskrit word that just immediately drew him, attracted him. He loved the idea of blending Mother Path with non-dualism. That was, for him, finally he had found a definition in the ancient scriptures of the path he was on. And so he began to infuse us with that. Yes, the non-duality is Divine Mother Wisdom, they're one and the same. Start seeing them that way. Start following her instructions and doing what she says, and discover her inside of yourself and all other worlds too that exist within her. He says they all exist within her. She's beyond them, but they are all inside of her. Paravak in the Agamas, that would be the tantric side of things, basically means supreme word. She is the supreme word. Yes, you could probably say, yes, she's the final word on things. But the real import of that saying is that she is Om. That Om is her word. And Hrim, words like Om and Hrim are her words, words of power. Words of formlessness and words where form actually take place. Paravak, she's also Shabda Brahman in the Vedas. Shabda means God is sound. So there again you have this reference to these very high levels of vibration. Word is vibration, right? Isn't all this really have to do? Hearing, audibility, all pervasiveness. In this tradition, hearing is higher than seeing. Hearing is higher than feeling. Hearing is the main sense. That's the most subtle of all senses. And for us in the West, we're seeing. We're sight-oriented. We have to see to believe. But there, they hear and they believe. You must know the truth, and the truth shall set you free means you must hear the truth from a realized soul. And when you hear the truth from a realized soul, it'll make an impression on you, and you'll never forget it after that. The hound of heaven will be on your trail. You may walk away and say, oh, that's really nice there, but I've got things to do. But the hound of heaven is on your trail, and he'll catch up with you before long. And that's a joyous day when he does. Well, if that does happen to you, you'll probably sing something like Jaya Jagadambe Site Radhe Gauri Durge Namo Namo 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 Jaya Jagadambe. Victory to Jagadambe, the mother of the worlds, all the worlds, outer, inner, and transcendent, and all the bodies and all the senses, all the people, all the beings that people them. Victory to Jagadambe. She is Sita, she is Radhe. Sita was Ram's consort, Radhe was Krishna's consort. But she's not just an extant consort. She is the reality itself. She's Gauri, that's Shiva's consort, Parvati. She is Durga. Durga doesn't have a consort. She's fiercely independent. Namo Namo. I pay my worship to her name, to her very name. This is all about names. And Gauri Durga Namo Namo. So when you see her sporting as Kundalini in your own consciousness, you'll want to say, oh mind, let's go within and into the temple of the heart and find her there and worship her. You won't be able to take your senses with you, but try and take your tongue. Because if you have your tongue there, you can sing her praises when you see her. So, therefore, you end up with this very profound realization of the devotion of non-separation. So that's how I want to end here in this fourth class of that subject. And we will move on to a related subject called the Advaita of the Avatars next week at the ashram. That is the non-duality of the avatars, how they see Mother, how they see non-duality. And there'll be some very pertinent charts on display and also some music to demonstrate that for you. So here, let's end with a chant. Om Devim Prasanam Pranatarti Hantrim Yogindra Pujam Yugadharma Patram Tam Sharadam Bhakti Vigyana Datram Dayaswarupam Pranamami Nityam. O Sharda, propitious goddess, killer of misery in souls resigned, savior of religion in every age, by saints and sages worshipped, O mother kind, give us love and wisdom thou, O grace incarnate, to thee we bow. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat.
Shanti Swarupini Sharada Devi Namostute. Matri Swarupini Sneha Swarupini Mangala Dayini Namostute. Bhakti Swarupini Bhava Swarupini Mukti Pradayini Namostute. Kama Saharini Karunya Rupini Koivaya Dayini